Silent Hills, plural, was just announced in a kind of a really cool way. It was hidden inside of a demo for...
It's not hidden. They released a demo. They announced they released a demo called PT.
Yes.
And it was free to download. And you played it, and at the end of beating it, you realize it's Silent Hills.
That's not hidden? I mean, well, it's... You don't know you're playing a Silent Hills demo.
Yeah, okay, then I just misheard your wording. Yeah, I know. We're on the same page then. Yeah, you don't know you're playing a Well, you technically didn't know you were playing a Silent Hill demo. What's interesting about it is the people who are behind it. Obviously, Team Silent disbanded years ago, and it's just been done by third-party companies since, and they haven't done a particularly great job with it. What this has behind it, love him or hate the man, it's got Hideo Kojima, and it's got Guillermo del Toro, who I love, especially just for Pan's Labyrinth alone.
That's a great movie.
I will always love that man for that movie.
And he's just done what? He's just done not Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim. He did Pacific Rim. He also wrote, along with Chuck Hogan, the entire Strain series, which is now a TV show
on FX.
So these two people behind it, plus Norman Reedus, this is following in the tradition of using real actors like they've done before with Ellen Page and the one guy I love from Mad Men, but I can't remember his name, that they did in L.A. Noire, where they're actually getting a real actor to mocap and get all the facial textures and stuff.
And Kevin Spacey coming to Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. Like, so they're using Norman Reedus, who is a very good actor. And
Daryl from Walking Dead.
Yeah. More importantly would be, what movie? Usual Suspects. That's what I always remember.
Oh, that's right.
I always remember him from Usual Suspects.
Go back and watch that.
But, so... What's interesting about this game is, and from what I've heard so far, is true. It's supposed to be very scary. Every game says it wants to be very scary, but Hideo Kojima said that in video games there is this kind of unspoken rule with scary video games, where you can make them scary, but you can't make them too scary, otherwise people aren't going to want to play them, or they're going to stop playing it. They're not going to go back to it, and they're not going to buy your sequel.
You think so?
I don't necessarily...
I don't subscribe to that.
I also have never played other than maybe Condemned Criminal Origins, I've played very few games that have actually truly scared me, so I think there is something to that.
Doom scared you?
Yeah, Doom did scare me, but Doom scared me not enough to stop me from playing it.
Okay.
So what he's saying is they've held back on scares to a degree.
I mean, enough to give you nightmares, that sort of thing.
So what they're aiming for with this game is to not purposely stop you from playing it, but they're not really worried about whether you finish it or you're too scared. He has said that they want to make this game as scary as possible, even at the expense of you not finishing it or basically it not being commercially viable for another sequel with that team. And that to me is interesting because I love horror video games. I don't like slasher movies necessarily, but I do like horror movies, and one of my favorite genres of games is horror games, and there's just not a lot out there. So I'm very interested in it. From what I've heard, the demo is very good. And I don't know. I mean, it's not on a system that I can play it on, so it's going to have to wait for me.
Are we getting to a point now? Is it a little... It's expected that we'd make the jump because a lot of games are presented as movies now. Are we getting to dangerous territory, though, that now games are sort of now banking on big stars to star in their games? I'm not entirely comfortable with this if this becomes a trend. I'm not comfortable with it because they try that with movies, and a lot of times those movies aren't good. They get a big name attached to it, and it's terrible. So I'm not a fan of it if that's what they're banking on going forward as I guess as an extra marketing chip to get that extra 10%, 15, 20% to get the game. Yeah. I think it can come off as cheap, and I think it'll get played out after a year or two because this has only really started to happen now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have my fears. I mean, let's take in a bad instance, okay? Lollipop Chainsaw by Suda51. Suda51 was supposed to be the big name developer behind it. Him and Grasshopper Studios and James Gunn actually was writing and kind of basically directing the game. And I mean, I didn't want to because it was kind of embarrassing, but I was like, this was the last game of his I played. I played 5 minutes of it, and the gameplay was just embarrassingly awful. I didn't get far enough to see how embarrassingly awful the story is.
You were just done.
But if you're playing a game with a busty cheerleader with a chainsaw, I mean, that can only go one of two ways, and it's going to take a real wordsmith to make that go well. So, I mean, I stopped playing, so there's an example of it being bad. But you look at this, and like I said, personality-wise, some people may not like Kojima, but he does have interesting visions for games as a game developer, designer, producer. Okay, and Guillermo del Toro is fantastic at crafting a horror world. And Norman Reedus, really all he has to do is show up and do mocap and say some lines. So I don't think this is quite as big of a gamble. But yes, I do not want to see these movie style splashes every time a game is announced.
I'm not saying a gamble. I'm saying, is this what is going to be selling games in the future to mask the fact that the gameplay or game is actually shit? That's what I'm afraid of. Because they do that with movies all the time. They put a huge budget around a movie with someone like Will Smith, like Wild Wild West, and it's an absolute atrocity.
I think what's going to sell people on this, honestly, I mean, the names aren't going to hurt, but I think it's just the fact that Konami is showing that they're giving a shit about Silent Hill again after years of not giving two fucks about it. And I think that's what's got people excited more than the names is, yes, we have big names, but it's more that they are really trying to make something playable here.
Okay, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Is this like Aliens? Or is there multiple Silent Hill towns that are attacking? Silent Hills? That's kind
Silent Hills, yeah. Who knows?